Good morning, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the coffee break. Now we're meeting to discuss one topic which has become more and more a reality: hot summers and cold winters. Hotter than usual, colder than usual. Now, energy efficiency has never played such a crucial role as it is playing today, and it's not just about its role in decarbonizing, it's also about its role in ensuring energy security and in also ensuring that it benefits those who are most vulnerable in our society by really allowing to consume efficiently. And today's session now is focusing on buildings, because indeed buildings are an essential part of our transition towards low-carbon economy. And in fact, if I take the global figures, they represent 30% of the final energy consumption and 27% of all energy sector emissions. So it's crucial and it's decisive to tackle buildings. And within these emissions, heating and cooling represent about half of the energy demand, and also it's used essentially for water and space heating as well. Now, we know from various studies that the marginal costs of decarbonizing in heating and cooling will be lower than in other carbon-intensive sectors, such as industry and transport. So it's about really seizing this potential. And in doing so, we also need to tackle behavior, and behavioral changes are key. So it's in this context that I'm really pleased and honored to have with us an excellent panel coming and representing 4 continents of the world with different approaches, different perspectives, but sharing many common challenges. So we have with us today His Excellency Raimons Kūdars, Minister for Climate and Energy in Latvia. Welcome, Minister. We also have His Excellency Okasai Oplot, Uganda Minister of State for Energy. Welcome. With us and representing industry, Monsieur Benoît Bazin, CEO of Saint-Gobain company. Also with us today, Mr. Laurent Michel, who is the Director General for Energy and Climate at the Ministry of Ecological Transition in the country which is hosting us, France. Also with us, Ms. Paula Glover, President of the Alliance to Save Energy, and usually based in the United States. And we have with us Mr. Zhu Ji, CEO and President of the Energy Foundation, China. And our youngest representative in the panel today, Ms. Winifred Awimpoya Atanga. She's the ACT peer educator from Rwanda. So very big welcome to all of you. And I would start immediately with a question to Minister Kūdars. Minister, in 2021, Latvia recorded high temperatures of almost 34 degrees and a record low of minus 27 degrees. So a hot summer, a very cold winter. This temperature range, while exceptional, really highlights the topic that we are discussing in this session. Can you share with us the Latvian experience on this topic and how you've been dealing with it in Latvia?
Thank you very much for a question. And firstly, I thank you very much for invitation. And Latvia is not an official part of International Energy Agency, but we are in process. And I hope in next year, beginning of next year, we will be. And it's for us is very important. And thank you again for invitation here to be together with our colleagues. Of course, I come from a region with some big differences of temperatures. in summer it's hot and we wear in shirts, and in winter time we wear a warm coat, and it's absolute normal in Latvia. And the additional challenge is not only this difference of temperatures. Additional challenge is fluctuation of temperatures. For example, now we have Latvia very warm day, approximately 22. For Baltic it's a very good condition. But in night period, today we have approximately 5 and sometimes below 0. It is possible, and for heating system, and we in Latvia, of course, is key challenges is heating system. It is very, very difficult in terms of regulation, in terms of investment, in terms of efficiency, and it's two parts of efficiency. One part is producing of heating, and other is building. Of course, it's very important. But for producing of heating, it is some very, very big challenges to make the system efficiency and affordability for population, for citizens, because when we see last year's increasing of prices, it was very terrible time for many people in Europe and in Baltic region, Latvia too. And now we can see in future with most optimistical. But of course, we must be ready for some emergency situation in sector of energy. And Latvia heating systems backbones is a robust district heating system. It was a legacy from Soviet time, but in generally, district heating or centralizing systems of heatings is efficiency, and last 10 years, approximately 50 million euros was invested in the system across Latvia, and most of the system, district system, displayed in Riga, in capital of Latvia, and some other countrysides and other cities in Latvia. And just for example, because I have some experience as major, 13 years, so average Latvian cities, approximately with 20,000 people, we have fluctuation for producing of heating in winter time, approximately 30 megawatts, in summer, not only for hot water, for buildings, 2 megawatts. It is some challenges in this situation. Of course, and digitalization, I think is a key word in this situation, because the system, every system of central heating system is built with many resources, and Latvian basic resource is biomass as a renewable resources. It is our basic load for district heating, but without gas for peak times, without other non-born technologies, as for example solar technologies, for central heating system, solar technologies, not only for producing of electricity, it is quite difficult. Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Kudars. And indeed, you described the supply side, but then on the demand side, it's also where we need to work, and a lot on consumer behavior. And that's why I'd like to ask Ms. Atanga, indeed, as behavior and awareness campaigns are key in addressing people's attitude to energy consumption, you actually are the co-founder of EcoHomes, an initiative which is led by young people like you, and which is dedicated to providing space to promote sustainable changes through sustainability projects and campaigns, for instance, clean cooking solutions. What was the importance, you believe, of these campaigns in the success of your EcoHomes initiative?
Thank you for the question, and thank you, IEA, for giving us a space to speak as young people. I believe many young people are here and would also love this opportunity, so I'm very thankful to represent all young people. So for EcoHomes, EcoHomes is, for those of you who don't know, EcoHomes is a local-led initiative by young people, for young people, but starting now, not in the future. Yeah, so we promote sustainable changes at home through recycling, plastic waste, and also organic waste for cooking. So this organic waste is biogas and ethanol gel. So for behavioral changes, EcoHomes adopted a human-centered design in the process of building our solutions, because we believe that to be able to provide solutions for young people or for the community, we needed to understand the people that we are working for. So we stayed in with them, conducted research for the past 4 years. We are still in the process of research, even though our project has been launched, we continue to create more research. So in the process of human-centered design, we realized that it's really important to understand that campaigns on behavior is very important, because you can't create solutions for people without understanding what their problems are. And before understanding, you need to also, after understanding, you need to create awareness of what these problems are and how they can solve these problems with you. So I believe in the process of doing that, we're able to provide them with the idea of understanding that energy and energy consumption or conservation is very key. We could provide them with solutions, but how are we sure that they'll be able to use these solutions effectively? How they'll be able to use these solutions effectively is through energy efficiency and conservation. So we create awareness on energy conservation, how to use energy efficiently at home, whether in cooking or heating. We also we identified that in rural communities, because those are our target audience, we don't really target the cities because they have their own things and the rural communities do not. There's always a gap, but you understand. So for local communities, most people do not understand that when you talk about cooking, it's energy. Well, we conducted like literacy campaigns in like a local school. So we asked them a question: what is energy? Oh, it's the ability to do work. Okay. Do you know that the fuel your mom uses to cook is energy? They're like, no, that's charcoal. What do you mean? So we had to create awareness. So behavior from a young age is very essential of them understanding that energy is not just the ability to do work. It is also what they use to cook, what they use to eat, or anything that they do, because I believe energy is the center of all the SDGs. No one should attack me, but that's what I believe, because without energy, everything works and revolves around energy. So I believe as our targets are young people, it is very, very important, and awareness and behavior campaigns play a very important role in understanding the basics of energy, from its efficiency to its conservation and its usage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and also for putting emphasis on the fact that it's not about imposing behaviors, but first and foremost, we need to understand who is the consumer at stake and address the specificities. Then let me go on, because in this transition, and if we are to really seize the huge potential of energy efficiency, we cannot do it without the governments, the young people, but also the industry, which plays a key role in providing the solutions and the services. And that's why I'd like to ask Mr. Bazin from Saint-Gobain. Saint-Gobain has actually set an objective to help its consumers reduce their CO2 emissions through the use of its products and solutions, or by reducing the carbon impact of their production. Now, how is this being actually achieved, and against the background of this increasingly hot summers and increasingly unpredictable winters?
Thank you. I'm optimistic because we have solutions indeed. The question is the scale and the speed. If you look at any building, you lose 30% of the energy through the roof, 20% with the facade, 15% through the floor. So tackling the envelope of the building is the solution to reduce by roughly 70% of the energy you spend. So this is what we provide in 75 countries around the world, all the solutions to have the right performance on the envelope of the building. By doing so, by the way, you can avoid 1.3 billion tons of CO2 during the lifetime of the building, because you reduce heat, you reduce cooling, etc., etc. So if I take Saint-Gobain solutions, we make 50 billion euros of sales around the world. The impact, the positive impact of our solutions during the lifetime of a good insulated home, a new home with the right standards, you save 1.3 billion tons of CO2. So that's massive, and it's 40 times the total scope 1 to 3 of emissions from Saint-Gobain to manufacture those materials. So that's tackling the envelope is the solution. The second is that it's very important to do things in the right order. If you were to put a heat pump in a badly insulated home, I take the image of driving your car with the windows wide open and the air conditioning at maximum speed. It's not good, it's not going to bring any benefit, and worse, we all know that we lack electricity, we lack green energy. There is not enough investment, even in EU, about green electricity. If we don't have the right insulation on the envelope, we will oversize all the equipment, and we will spend a huge amount of money of electricity and will not bring the benefits. So it's very important to do that. You know, I take also the sensor you can put in a building. When your kids are sick, you want the thermometer or do you want the drugs and the doctor? We provide the cure of the building by tackling the envelope versus the thermometer to measure what's left or not. Or if you have a badly insulated home, yes, it will be connected, but it will be badly insulated. And people will freeze in their school or freeze in their home. So I think we have to put things in the right order. The good news is that all those products are made locally, because the products in building materials don't travel, and we don't build in Canada, like in Vietnam, like in South Africa. So it's very important to be local for those local countries. But again, I'm optimistic because the solutions do exist. It's tackling the envelope, it's putting things in the right order, and it brings a lot of comfort and basic well-being for the users. It could be at home, it could be in a school, it could be in a hospital. It's very important to realize that a lot of people, even in France, we have 4 million of people who live in bad housing. And bad housing because they cannot either pay their energy bill or buy food. That's in France in 2022. So it's very important to take care of that. This is the real life of the people. You could find it a bit boring to renovate so many houses and million homes in France, in Europe, around the world, but we have to do it, and we have to do it in the right order, tackling the low efficient energy homes first with all the public subsidies, or I think we have to address that. If I take just France, we have 5 million of homes which are F and G, so the lowest grade on energy performance. They make 70 to 80% of the CO2 emissions. All the public efforts, all the norms should be there to progressively move up the minimum energy performance, tackling the envelope. But the solution exists, so I'm optimistic. It's a matter of scale and speed.
Thank you very much. And the idea really that we cannot, it's not about individual actions, it's not about replacing the window or putting the solar PV, it's the combination of all the measures that will really provide for most efficiency. And in this regard, I can't hold, even in my role as moderator, to refer to the Performance of Buildings Directive at European level, which is being negotiated as we speak. It just started yesterday with the European Parliament and the member states, and where among the provisions it's about tackling the worst performing buildings first, because they really can bring a lot of efficiencies in a short time. Now, we have heard from Latvia. Now we'd like to hear from France, and we've all come from a very, very challenging year, including the winter, where the whole of the world was looking into Europe and whether we would make it in terms of overcoming the winter. And countries like France have taken ambitious measures, notably to address the energy crisis, to reduce in an efficient way energy consumption. Mr. Michel, how did France go about this, and what was the balance in terms of maybe sometimes sacrificing some comfort of the consumers in order to make sure that we would also reduce consumption?
Yes, thank you very much for this meeting, this question. So the idea was asked by the President and implemented by our Minister to have minus 10% of consumption of electricity and gas in 2024. The plan, it was called Ssufficiency plan, was launched in October after, and I think this was very important, a strong consultation with many stakeholders, municipalities, but also, for instance, the world of sports that use many buildings, businesses, and so on. What did we do? First, it was, let's say, small investments or small measures that could have a strong impact very fast. For instance, improved maintenance of heating devices or better use of your piloting devices in the buildings and so on. And of course, there was much emphasis on respecting rules regarding temperature in buildings not more than 19 degrees Celsius. And so this was, say, short-term actions. But already at this stage, we also put emphasis on a little more long-term actions, such as now there are regulations that compel you to install pilot devices until 2027, yes, in buildings. But we said, okay, this is for 27, but start now, we will give you subsidies to accelerate. And this gave results, the minister said. And also what was very important was, let's say, communication, public awareness campaigns, but also mobilization of many stakeholders. For instance, the heating and cooling and energy service companies made much promotion of these measures towards their customers, because the service companies work for customers. If the customer asks for something or does not ask for something, it's different. So they promoted all these measures, for instance, of better maintenance. And perhaps I will finish that by saying that also from the beginning of the plan and for the next step, we would have this to be also a first step towards longer-term action. First, there will be a second sufficiency plan, will probably be announced next week for summer and preparation of next winter in order to keep these savings. It's not the crisis, perhaps is over or not, we don't know, but we want to keep the savings and we want to go further. That's why already some other measures have been launched, such as increased support to connection to district heating, also a big program towards municipalities and buildings and renovation of their buildings with two phases, or two tools, let's say. One tool to help them building their project, because it's not easy to make a project if you are a normal municipality. You don't have all technical means, you need advice. So there's support for this, and there are more public funds to help this renovation. It's only one example, but we made that also in industry, or of course for households with any increased support to individual people or to collective building. And also here an emphasis next year would be put in place on more advice, deeper advice to help people build their programs. So the strong results, much consultation with stakeholders, and awareness campaigns, and going to the future to build on this effort as a first step and not at the end of the story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So also the role of information campaigns as a key element, and looking interestingly at what are these measures which have come out of a crisis but which could actually become structural. And I think across the society we've all discovered efficiency measures triggered by the need really to reduce and consume more efficiently. Let me now turn to Africa, and let me turn to Minister Upload and look into Uganda, which you would think has generally a warm climate with average daytime temperatures ranging from 21 to 25 degrees. However, and we tend to forget that it can be much cooler at night. So this daily temperature range can, of course, constitute a challenge in ensuring that people are comfortable in their home while trying to remain efficient. What has been and is Uganda's approach to this issue, Minister?
That's an interesting question. Thank you, Commissioner. You rightly said, when this one was said, the question, hot summer, cold winter, and I was just wondering, what am I going to say about this? Because we are within a comfortable zone of temperatures. The temperature is between, during the day temperature 21 to 25, night 15 to 19. So that's fairly comfortable. You can cover yourself. When it is cold, you put a blanket on. When you're outside, you'd rather sit under a tree into air conditioning. For me, the focus is using energy for economic transformation of the country. That temperature range for Uganda is very suitable for pests in agriculture, is suitable for diseases. So it is actually fighting other adversaries which come to enjoy the temperatures. So for us, it is mainly looking at what you do to the vulnerable people. A woman is actually predominantly using biomass for cooking. The children spend a lot of time fetching firewood. So it is generating adequate electricity, adequate appropriate energy to save those vulnerable, to move them to a comfortable zone. So we're looking at a diverse array of energy resources that we have. Uganda is predominantly a clean energy country. Over 80% of our generated electricity is through renewable energy because of the array of resources that we have. Hydro, geothermal, solar, because of being astride equator, the sun is always up there and we can generate that energy. We also look into wind, which we have in the country. So it is mainly using that energy efficiently to cause economic transformation. For me, I would be looking at how do I fight against the various adversaries in agriculture, because our energy is mainly focused for productive uses of energy. So we drive it to agriculture. How do I conserve agricultural produce? How do I get the woman to cook the food using clean energy? How do I move my products from one part of the country or globally to the markets? That's what we will be talking into. Energy for transformation, for better lives at household, but most importantly, use energy now for advancing health, advancing education, advancing industrialization of the country, and enhancing trade. That's what I would actually be discussing here, using energy for economic and productive uses. This is what I would present. I would set my own question out of this. How can I use energy for economic transformation and improving the livelihoods of the people?
Thank you, Minister Opolot, and I think we can take this away. I like the slogan, energy and energy efficiency to trigger economic transformation, to trigger positive economic transformation. Now, I'd like to turn to Ms. Glover, who's heading Alliance to Save Energy, and which mandate is quite an ambitious and challenging one. So the mandate and the mission of Alliance to Save Energy is make energy efficiency the most impactful, cost-effective driver of the just energy transition, reducing domestic emissions by 40%, while at the same time advancing equity, reliability, and affordability for customers. Now, this is a difficult one. How are you actually pursuing this vision in practice?
Yeah, so thank you for the question and for the invitation. And as I hear that goal out loud, can't believe we wrote that down and decided that's what we were doing. You know, we at the Alliance have really made a commitment to center equity because we understand that efficiency has multiple touch points, and there are a lot of ways that it's impactful for communities. The first, you know, not the first, but one that we often talk about is climate. But as many of us may know, that in the United States, climate is not always the driver for decision making. It's a very political kind of conversation. And so to pick up on the minister's theme, economics, right? Efficiency can drive economic empowerment in a way that no other sector of the energy business can. We have more than 2.5 million jobs in the United States can be created just from efficiency. That makes us the largest employer in the energy sector. Our roles are in 99.8% of the counties in the United States, so maybe 6 or 5 counties in the US do not have a job in energy efficiency. And so we center equity, but what we're talking about is how do we ensure that efficiency is available, affordable, and accessible to every single person, household, small business in our country. And that is a huge goal. And the other, alongside that, we have an administration that is really also focused on equity and has created a lot of initiatives, one of which is Justice 40, to ensure that we are all focused on those of us who we've left behind. The challenge with that is that most of these communities have not just been left behind with energy. They've also been left behind with access to technology. They've also been left behind with substandard housing. They've also been left behind with poor educational attainment. There are lots of income. There are all these other drivers. And so our job is to work with policymakers so that they understand that this problem is multifaceted, and that means we have to bring a lot more people to the table. It's not just industry and government. It also has to be advocates. It also has to be community leaders. It also has to be your local state officials. It has to be young people, because we have all of these different things that we're trying to really solve at one time, because they're so connected. And I'll just leave you with an example. Efficiency beyond the building does not move forward without access to broadband, right? All the sensors requires internet. But if you live in a community or have a household that does not have access to internet, then we can't get there. And so we do need to be able to bring those who advocate for broadband to the table when we're talking about efficiency policy, because we need them too, just like we need those who are working on water and other issues. And so for us at the Alliance, it's about convening everybody, understanding where people are, listening really deeply, looking at the policies that we're advocating for, and then honestly asking ourselves, what else do we need, because we know it's not enough.
Thank you very much. So energy and energy efficiency as a multifaceted challenge, and really requires a very inclusive approach. And this panel reflects some of that, but we could add many more representatives of society who would also need to come along to tackle this challenge. And let me now turn to Mr. Zhu Ji and ask you, in the case of China, what are the policies and actions that you have witnessed driving a faster deployment of highly efficient buildings in order to really accelerate the transition and, of course, ultimately also the comfort of people?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and also thank you for the invitation. So regarding the policy, no need to say policy can serve as a very, very important enabling environment to deploy technology, the management measurements. And with my observation, we have at least 4 major major drivers, to implement the policy for the more efficient, higher energy efficiency building. Number one, I would like to highlight the green building standards. In China, we have had green building standards covered different dimensions, including energy use per unit square meters, insulation, as well as major appliance within the, for example, air conditioner, heating devices, etc., etc. So this is number one. The second thing is electrification. The rate of electrification, especially in Chinese context, this is mainly related to heating and cooking. In China, we have our food culture. Many people, you enjoy Chinese food, but do not forget, if you want to enjoy very, very real taste of Chinese cook, and normally we need heating, with coal, with natural gas, etc., etc. But this is changing for younger generation. They also cook Chinese food, but they try to use electrified cooking. So, but certainly even more important thing is heating by which energy. So in the past, we mainly use coal. And afterwards, especially in the past 1 or 2 decades, we experienced a process for coal switching to natural gas, especially in urban area. And now we are stepping into a new stage. See how we can transit from both coal, natural gas towards electricity. And together with the process of our power, low carbon, deep decarbonization process in power sectors. So in early this morning, our Vice Chairman from NDRC, he also mentioned, very rapid development of renewable. So then that means we should combine all the things together as a whole system. On one hand, you decarbonize your power system, and then you electrify your end user of energy, including building. So this is why I emphasize building electrification. The third thing is about retrofitting, and I also saw from Sinead, Chairman, in his presentation, I also saw a very similar point. So in China, as you know, as a matter of the stock of the building and the equipment and the devices for residential use, for industrial use, we have a lot of old buildings, for example. And for those old buildings, normally they were built, maybe 30 or 40 years ago. At that time, we didn't have advanced technology, and the efficiency had been very low. And then how to improve that? By retrofitting. And this is a very huge market. So just to show a figure. So during 2016 to 2020, the area for retrofitting is about 700 million square meters. And in the current 5-year plan period, from 2021 to 2025, it's about 350 million square meters. And if you consider the unit cost, so that means a huge investment for improvement of insulation and for the improvement of appliance, heating system, cooling system, etc., etc. So these can make significant improvement of energy efficiency for building. Finally, I would also like to emphasize another policy instrument, that's efficiency improvement. Against the baseline in 2080s. That means, so we have a different stage for the requirements of efficiency, energy efficiency, building energy efficiency. For example, 10 years ago, we required, newly developed real estate, newly constructed building. They have to improve, to reach energy efficiency by 65% reduction of energy use against the 1980 baseline. And now we are, almost reading the request, for 83% energy reduction against the same baseline, but with larger reduction of energy use. So those are the major lever for China to improve its building energy efficiency. And finally, I would also like to highlight the importance, about the cooperation, the interaction between government and enterprises, industry. So that's very important. No need to say, 5-year plan, to come up with the target for 5-year plan, and together with systematic guideline for building energy efficiency improvement from the government, together with the think tank, the research centers, and followed by action from industry. They need to have incentive, they need to have the enforcement based on data sharing, stakeholder consultation, etc., etc. In that way, government and enterprises, they work together to, especially targeting at the real estate developer. This is the most important stakeholders, to make the policy become the true. Thank you.
Thank you, and what an impressive journey, and from the cooking with coal to the natural gas, and now looking into the electrification of a huge country and the challenges and what would be the impact and the role of the buildings. And you mentioned the need for cooperation and partnerships, and we'll give it a try for a second round where we'll need to be shorter, but let's give it a try as we started later. And picking precisely on your last point, Mr. G, I'd like to ask Mr. Bazin precisely how should governments, industry leaders and stakeholders collaborate to improve building and equipment efficiency?
I think it's indeed a collaborative effort, because again, the good thing is that the technical solutions in buildings do exist. Making a passive house, in Madrid, in Manchester, or in Philadelphia, we know how to do it. The trick is to help all the stakeholders, the homeowners, the financing, the private banks that do not participate a lot on the energy transition. They could be asked. The architects, the industrials, the mayors, the city mayors, etc. So I think that's the challenge. The best way to do it is to define norms. I think what the EU Parliament did with minimum energy efficiency, with visibility over time, because we have to keep in mind buildings, it's a low speed, inertia on building permits, on norms, on training the craftsmen. It takes 4 to 5 years to translate a norm into action. So I think we have to be patient. We have to give visibility, stability, a 10 years horizon. This is what the Prime Minister gave, about France, to divide by half the emissions in the next 8 years. So visibility, stability, cooperation through norms, and putting things again in the right order. We advocate, for instance, for our passport of energy efficiency in buildings. To do it, like you have shots when you have kids, in the right order, you start with, again, the envelope, you change your heating system, you change the air quality with ventilation, etc., etc. And public buildings have to be exemplary, they have to lead. So I think it's very interesting to say that the best energy is the one you don't spend, so that you can spend it for economic development, you can spend it for energy bill for food, for education, so let's keep in mind the best energy is the one you don't spend, and we can, and we work together across many, many stakeholders.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Ms. Atanga, how do youth organizations come into this partnership with industry, with policymakers, with local authorities?
Yeah, so building on the points made by Mr. Benoit, collaboration plays a really important role in energy efficiency, and young people play a much bigger role. So how do we do this? I think by involving young people and collaborating with them on their projects is a very important aspect. We require mentorships. We are young. We really don't know what world we are stepping into. So having an upper hand from someone who is more experienced would play like a very important role in helping us with our projects. There are many young people who are carrying out projects in energy efficiency, but they do not know how to go about with it. But when we have people in the high level that are able to help us in understanding how we can create our projects to be sustainable in long-term sustainable. And also another point is providing support for young people and giving them a platform. Just like this. I don't know how to say, but this explains a lot to my point about supporting young people and giving them a platform. And also, there's nothing without financial aid. Yeah. So, involving young people could be looking for a young person in your community that has a project on energy efficiency or anything related to energy or sustainability. Give them a chance, give them seed funding, and then see what happens in the next 5 years. Trust me, it's going to be big. So just do it if you have the chance to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I turn to Minister Upload. How can you work and involve and make sure that also young people organizations are part of it and along with industry?
Thank you for that question. Young people should have a specific target. How do we put them into internship, apprenticeship, whatever we're doing? In the case of Uganda, when you consider housing, it is more about ventilation, allowing external temperatures to influence internal temperatures. When it is warm in the day, can we engage the young entrepreneurs, the students, to develop the designs of appropriate housing for that area, that part of the world? Secondly, can we involve the young generation in designing appropriate energy resources of the country? They should be at the fore, looking at the future. We should not be looking at what it is today. We should be encouraging them to look at what it will be tomorrow, learning from the history, the current, to improve the situation. We should be looking at them in designing appropriate appliances, especially for households. For example, Atanga is a lady. She should be thinking, how can she move the woman from where she is today to a better situation tomorrow? Looking at the transport, they are the ones who should be thinking about what should the transport mode be, how can they conserve energy in the transport of tomorrow, other than relying on what is today. Back home, I actually encourage the young generation to be thinking of effective and efficient use of electricity for transportation, effective and efficient electricity for cooking, effective use of the appliances and also reducing the losses of electricity. Back in my house, when I look at it, it is the young ones who continue flicking the electricity on and off. And it's actually getting them into the culture of conserving energy. The young generation will help us to deliver. So this is what I would be looking for, making them part and parcel of planning, the policy setting, listening to them. What is it? What is it that they use? How can we help them to improve the situation for the future?
Thank you very much. And Mr. Michel, how is France going about this collaborative approach with actors across the society?
Yes, it's of course very crucial. Perhaps the first stage is defining together the targets, the best possible ways to address it, and so build the framework. So, for instance, we've made roadmaps for decarbonization of transportation, of building sector, and so on. And of course, every action program or regulation are discussed with stakeholders, municipalities, companies, and so on. So afterwards, I think we need much dedication and constance in implementation. It's very easy to say, for instance, we need skills. We need more people, more skilled people to address this renovation, building programs, and so on. But once you've said that, you've said nothing. You need to bring together the schools, the Ministry of Schools, the universities, but also companies to help in delivering these courses and hire people or pre-hire them. So really we need a strong involvement. And also once we have put a target, for instance, we have a target for tertiary building, which is in 2030 minus 40%, in 2040 minus 50%, and so on. And this, it's a regulation, I think it's a social contract. We've all decided together, we are a democracy in which there are many consultations, but once you've decided something, there's a regulation, there are public support there. I think we must bring all efforts there to respect, because of course you have exemplarity of public buildings, but you have everybody, because I think when people think you have some of them who want to escape the social contract, it's not good for the action. And last thing also, I think it's also in implementation, bringing also people of different horizons together. We have a STEM, which is the white certificate schemes, in which energy suppliers are compelled to pay in order to support energy savings action. This is not sometimes nice for them, they have to pay, but it has created dynamics bringing them, the ones who produce energy and sell, the one who use, the one who bring solutions, the municipalities, companies. So and this has brought new ideas and new solutions. I think really we have to encourage that from innovation towards implementation. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Glover, this is part of the mission of the Alliance to Save Energy, precisely by convening and engaging in diverse public-private partnerships. So what's your take on this collaborative approach?
Yeah, I think, really briefly, two things. One, it's always important. We so many times take a macro view to these issues that we forget that there is a person at the end of what we're doing. And not, can be someone in a home, someone who's working in a business, but there is always somebody who's impacted by our work. And so when we think about collaboration and convening, we always start with deeply listening, and especially deeply listening to those we think we may disagree with. Because oftentimes those that we disagree with, we really don't disagree. It's just a tool that, right? We're really disagreeing about a mechanism or a tool, but not necessarily the issue. And that's a lot easier to get to when we acknowledge that there are lots of tools that we can use to solve this problem. There are lots of financing tools that we can use to help people, whether that's using community development banks or grants or loans or having it federally funded or state or locally funded or doing it through regulation and having it come through your utility bills. There are lots of different kinds of tools. And so when we are sitting there listening to people and acknowledging what their pain points are, then we're able to kind of get to a solution that we can all agree upon. And so if I'm trying to convince home builders to build their homes so that they are more efficient, I can do that in a couple of ways, right? But it's good for me to understand why they're not doing that now, right? How do they make their money? And is there a way for me to get them to see how what I'm asking you to do is also going to allow you to make money and not impact your profit margin? Because that's a real thing. And if we start from a place of saying, well, I don't care about that, then you can't get them to the table. And so it's really important to deeply listen to people, to constantly acknowledge that you don't know what you don't know. And there are a lot of things that we actually don't know. We assume we know what the right answer is. We assume that this thing is going to work. We assume that these kinds of policies are the right kind of policies. But really, if we're honest with ourselves, we're hoping. And so it requires that we are constantly paying attention to those policies that are enacted and then ensuring that the results are what we thought they were going to be, and not doing it far behind, but doing it close enough to that time frame that if you need to pivot, if you need to stretch, if you need to change something or shift something, you actually have time to do it. Because under the backdrop of all of this work that we're doing is a real sense of urgency. And what my experience tells me is that a sense of urgency sometimes makes us lazy about doing the things that are really tough to do. And collaborative work is difficult work. It is. It's tough work and it takes a long time. But if you do not do it, we will never get there.
Absolutely, and thank you for these encouraging words. And now moving to our two last interventions, go back to the policy measures and ask Minister Kuders, specifically on the role of district heating in providing hot water and space heating in Latvia. And what have you seen as key barriers and challenges that slow down the progress on energy, on efficiency in buildings, heating and cooling? And what's been Latvia's approach precisely to district heating?
Thank you. Of course, the green transition efficiency is some not only challenges, but it's some opportunities for societies, for municipalities, for local communities. It is very important, some common conviction about next step towards our efficient and green transition. It is very important. Of course, when we see Latvia example, some approximately 90% of our flats buildings was built before 1992, and now we have approximately only 10% is totally reconstructed and now energy efficient, and the saving of energy in this situation is approximately 40 till 50%. It's a huge amount. And of course, it's very important this conviction of society to make some right step in right moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Kuders. And because when we speak of heating and cooling, so often the heat pumps come up to the discussion. But we heard that we cannot just aim at single individual measures. We need to see it as a whole. But I'd like to ask Professor G, what do you think, how and to what extent can heat pumps actually deliver on both heating and cooling, but while having to be part of an overall design, and how you're going about it?
Sure. Thank you for the question. And talking about the heat pump, I would like to talk some stories in China about that. In fact, we might have different drivers to reach the same targets in China context. So we have at least 3 major drivers to promote the application of heat pump. Number 1, air quality. As you may know, 10 or even 20 years ago, we suffered from very poor air quality, especially from fine particulates. We call it the PM10 or PM2.5. And especially one of the major contributors comes from scattered coal. used for heating, for cooking, especially for lower income group. Normally, they are located in rural area with low income. They are farmers, and also they are vulnerable. And how to improve that? I mean, on one hand, to reduce the air pollutant, but on the other hand, we should improve their comfort. I mean, so I regularly to visit to some villages in northern China, and I saw in winter the indoor temperature is exactly low. I mean, only say 10 to 11 centigrade, very, very cold. And then how to improve that? I mean, to reach two targets together. And the heat pump is one of the solutions. And in the past decade, China implemented air quality policy. One of the measures is to phase out scattered coal and replaced by solar energy, by heat pump. But certainly another choice is by natural gas. And for the moment, I should say we are only in the early stage. I mean, for larger penetration of heat pump in China. Why? Because we also tried coal switching to natural gas. But recently, especially after Ukraine war, we also saw the concern about energy security. I think we share the feeling from our European colleagues. So we also have very big problem for natural gas import. By the way, I mean, over 40% of natural gas come from international market. So this is a long-term energy security issue. And then these even make us be aware, oh, maybe we should switch to heat pump rather than natural gas for heating. I mean, when the rural people, these can be as large as I would say 5 to 600 million people. So very huge people, a huge amount of people, and then again together with the decarbonization of power system. And this is why we say, oh, we should work together for acceleration of renewable in China. This is something happening. And in the meanwhile, we use we call it the green electricity, green power, to power heat pump for heating, for cooling, for such a large group of vulnerable and low income population. And we believe this will help them to improve their productivity, to improve their comfort, and finally to improve their living quality. So this is the way for us to understand the heat pump. Thank you.
Thank you very much, because it's not a topic easy to address in 2 minutes. And just to conclude, and there were several takeaways, but clearly energy efficiency as a trigger for economic transformation, and in seizing the potential of energy efficiency in buildings, we need to pursue a holistic approach to look at the whole envelope, not just the individual elements of the building, but we also need to put all actors around the table, which goes actually beyond energy, digitalization, for instance, and other sectors. And we need to also work and be attentive to the behavior of the consumer, to actually be able to target the final consumer, and the role of campaigns, public awareness cannot be overemphasized. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to all the panelists for a great contribution, and wish you a very good conference still today and tomorrow. Thank you very much, and a big round of applause for everyone.